Welcome to the INFOWARS Nightly News. It is Tuesday, May 27th, 2014, and I'm Leanne McAdoo. Here's what's coming up tonight.
Tonight, a new report promises to name names of NSA spying victims. Then, a multi-weapon attack is used to push gun control. And the agenda for Bilderberg 2014 is revealed. That's next on the INFOWARS Nightly News.
Well, it is Bilderberg week here at INFOWARS, and our reporters are already on the ground there at Copenhagen, Denmark, the site of this year's annual meeting. We'll have reports coming in from David Knight and Paul Joseph Watson all throughout the week. Now, this year's agenda has been released, and it seems to show a little bit of desperation on the part of the globalists. Inside sources confirmed to INFOWARS that the elite conference will center around how to derail a global political awakening that is threatening their long-standing agenda of a one-world government. Now, Paul Joseph Watson states that because of that, the TTIP will be a central topic of this year's discussion. The passage of the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership will have a huge impact on the centralization of power by creating a world company. Initially, it'll be a free trade area, which would connect the United States with Europe. Now, just as the EU started as a free trade area and was eventually transformed into a political federation controlling upwards of 50% of its member states' laws and regulations, the TTIP is designed to accomplish the same goal, only on a bigger scale. Now, of course, the crisis in Ukraine and the relationship between Russia and NATO will also be a focal point of Bilderberg 2014. The globalists now consider Putin to have ostracized Russia from the New World Order because he dared to challenge the international system, as John Kerry put it. And Bilderberg will discuss fears that Putin is intent on constructing an alternative world order based around the BRICS countries, a multipolar system that will devastate the dollar as the world reserve currency and also heavily dilute the current US-EU NATO power axis. Now, our reporters will be there all week, further breaking down the agenda and how the issues on the agenda will really signal the future political conditions that we'll be seeing. And coming up later in the show, we'll re-air our last on-camera interview with Jim Tucker. He was the investigative journalist that really pioneered the stakeout of the Bilderberg meetings and helped to expose this shadowy group before his untimely passing last year, just weeks before the Bilderberg event. And I was very sad not to have been able to meet him. But if you want further proof of how the Bilderberg Conference sets global agenda, check out this article. It's up on Infowars.com today. How Bilderberg Made Obama. Both Barack Obama and John McCain attended the Bilderberg Conference prior to the 2008 presidential election. And of course, excerpts from the Obama deception chronicle how Obama was handpicked for the 2008 presidential election after a series of private meetings in Chantilly, Virginia. Now, another journalist who is also set out to expose the shadowy dealings of secret government groups is Glenn Greenwald. Now, in his finale piece dealing with the Edward Snowden revelations, Greenwald says he's going to reveal the names of the Americans that the NSA is spying on. Now, Greenwald told the UK's Sunday Times that Snowden's legacy would be shaped in large part by this finishing piece that is still to come. Greenwald said, "One of the big questions when it comes to domestic spying is who have been the NSA's specific targets? Are they political critics and dissidents and activists? Are they genuinely people we'd regard as terrorists? What are the metrics and calculations that go into choosing those targets? And what is done with the surveillance that is conducted? Those are the kinds of questions that I want to answer." Now, Greenwald, of course, went on to slam the NSA for its ineptitude, saying, here we have this huge menacing surveillance spy apparatus who allowed a contractor to steal and download nearly 2 million files, and of course proving that they have no control over the data protection. And then of course they couldn't even catch the guy, and admittedly they haven't even caught a single terrorist with this massive surveillance net. Now, earlier this month, we reported on an alarmist global warming report that was immediately hailed as a call to action by President Obama Obama. It called on the Defense Department to ramp up their spending in order to counteract and combat this man-made problem of global warming. Well, it turns out that that report wasn't issued by a private advocacy group, but rather a Pentagon think tank. And the research itself was funded by a climate change group that's also one of the think tank's main customers. Now, the report came from the Military Advisory Board within CNA Corp, and they include the Center for Naval Analysis, which is a Navy finance group, and both of those get contracts from the Pentagon. Now, CNA's website claims to maintain its objectivity, but 4 CNA board members sit on the panel of advisors to the Center for Climate and Security, and other board members work in the climate change world of consulting and technology. Now, of course, climate change is a big business. The U.S. government has increased spending by more than $100 billion from 2003 to 2010. Nations around the world are having to buy all of this equipment to monitor climate change. And of course, this means huge contracts for the consulting, studies, and technologies to analyze the Earth and the environment. And of course, that means huge contracts for these groups who were involved in writing this very alarming climate report. Doesn't sound very objective. But it's quite a shame that if there really is a problem with global warming, it is being overshadowed by the fact that those in power and those who are set to line their pockets with all these climate change policies, the real issue is being overshadowed by their exploitation. But of course, that doesn't stop the propaganda machine from continuing to pump out disinfo at the expense of the taxpayer. Now we have Columbia University. They're going to be spending $5.7 million taxpayer dollars creating fake climate change death voicemails. The projects are going to show several scenarios that promoters of global warming science swear will happen soon if the developed world doesn't mend its evil ways. One of the taxpayer-funded creations is going to be a series of fictitious voicemails in which people complain and gasp for breath. In one voicemail set in 2065, a man tells his mother that he's really worried about dying from either rising temperatures or a huge tsunami. And in another, a woman struggles frantically for breath because she is out of CO2 credits. Now, they are basically taking their global warming science and turning it into science fiction. Of course, that's really what it is at this point. But there's a movie about doling out these CO2 credits, and those who don't have enough money to purchase them, you know, they can't receive anymore. But who do you think is going to be doling out those CO2 credits? The same exact government agencies who are now pushing for climate regulations and carbon taxes. Really, do we need to give them power over the air that we breathe? Now, we've all obviously heard about the tragedy that took place this weekend. There was a mass killing spree that happened, but never one to let a crisis go to waste. After this mass killing by a young sociopath, gun control advocates and their ilk used it to push for gun control. The New York Daily News launched a series titled America in Denial, and it focuses solely on the 3 shooting deaths, completely ignoring the 3 stabbings that took place or the attempted murder of others as the murderer tried to mow them down with his car. Now, the author also goes on to bemoan the lack of gun control while completely ignoring the fact that California has some of the strictest gun control laws of any state in the country. Salon.com took the opportunity to blame this mass killing on white male privilege, while completely ignoring the fact that mass killings are carried out by other races as well. For instance, Easter weekend in Chicago, 8 people were killed and 32 injured. Or, of course, we have all the mass stabbings that have been going on in train stations in China. But, of course, those facts don't fit the agenda. Now, why isn't anyone talking about the fact that this kid has been in therapy since he was 8 years old, no doubt on a concoction of whatever drug cocktail the therapist decided to put him on? No doubt he is a misogynist and a sociopath, but gun control doesn't stop sociopaths. When are people going to learn that? Now, Of course, gun control is just one thing on the globalist agenda, but there is so much more, and you're going to learn about that right after the break. We're going to re-air our last on-camera interview with Jim Tucker, and he breaks down the globalist full agenda there at the Bilderberg meeting, and that's coming up right after this.
My friends, Alex Jones here to tell you about some of the most important information concerning you and your family's health. Radiation levels have more than doubled in the last 60 years in the Northern Hemisphere from all of the nuclear testing and radiological accidents. Radioactive contamination is now in most of the food supply. There's only two ways to avoid this. Move south of the equator or properly protect your thyroid with nascent iodine. Looking to protect my family, I've done deep research. Nascent iodine is the purest, cleanest, absolute best form of iodine to protect yourself and your family. It's made right here in the USA, completely non-GMO. I searched out the best quality and now have developed a double-strength form of nascent iodine, exclusively available at INFOWARSLife.com. Nascent iodine is on record as one of the only safe ways to detox from fluoride poisoning. Survival Shield Nascent Iodine. Secure your super high-quality nascent iodine today at INFOWARSLife.com. That's INFOWARSLife.com. The globalist social engineers are not just targeting us with propaganda. They are manipulating our genetics. We are being targeted at every level by estrogen mimickers that lower our testosterone and other hormones and natural compounds that the body needs. After consulting top doctors, nutritionists, pharmacists, and others, we have developed what I believe is the ultimate non-GMO organic super male vitality formula sourced from powerful organic herbs and then concentrated for maximum potency. Super Male Vitality was developed to activate your body's own natural processes instead of using synthetic chemicals. Super Male Vitality by INFOWARS Life is so powerful that I only take half the recommended dose. For a limited time, we are offering 15% off Super Male Vitality at INFOWARSLife.com to introduce you to this powerful supplement. Visit INFOWARSLife.com today to secure your Super Male Vitality. INFOWARSLife.com.
My name is Jim Tucker. We're at St. Marie, Switzerland for the Bilderberg meeting. Well, this year, Bilderberg is strongly committed to expanding the war with the invasion of Egypt so they could have a big war. They use the term big war a lot in the Middle East because that will generate profits. They want them all involved in a big war. Right. They want a war throughout the Middle East, with the exception of Israel. And as I said, there's big profits to be made from war. Because when you go to war, you're making tanks, airplanes, trucks, jeeps, and all kinds of war materials, which is profitable in its own way. And then the war profiteering kicks in, as it has in all of our wars, where other big bucks are made on top of the big bucks. Yes, as I've said before, the page one story in the Financial Times, 1 hour speech delivered by Secretary of Defense Robert Gates, calling for bigger NATO involvement in combat missions, more NATO support for the wars in the Middle East. Very rough-sounding 1 hour speech. It appeared on page one of the Financial Times, and the Financial Times has been attending Bilderberg meetings for decades, and so they keep the promises. So they identified, they said he simply spoke to a private group of luminaries or something to that effect. I've got the clipping here. It did not say Bilderberg. The